Have you ever wondered what life was like for Dorothy's three famous friends before she discovered them along the Yellow Brick Road? There's not much to the backstories of the Scarecrow and Cowardly Lion, but author L. Frank Baum did leave some juicy clues about the Tin Man. His transition from flesh to tin has been reimagined in everything from Broadway's Wicked to NBC's Emerald City, but one of the most faithful and artistically beautiful depictions can be seen in the off-Broadway hit The Woodsman. Now available to stream on Broadway HD, The Woodsman is the passion project of writer, director, and star James Ortiz. James, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks so much for having me.
It's a thrill for me to meet you and to get to talk to you about this incredible show. I loved it. I think it's really one of the most unique theatrical productions I've ever seen.
That's very kind. It was a real labor of love trying to sort of get a show put together that has no dialogue in it, that is entirely physical, that has puppets as main characters. You know, I try to walk into a pitch meeting with that.
Right.
It was a really beautiful challenge, but I think at the end of the day, just showing the work kind of got people excited enough. So here we are.
Well, and just you touched upon so many of the things that make it such a spectacular and unique theatrical experience,
Yeah.
but before we get there, as an Oz fan,
Yeah.
how did you come to love Oz?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz was the first book my mother ever read to me, so there's obviously emotional resonance there. First chapter book, so I mean one chapter a night, you know, coming back. So I mean that was the thing. I certainly knew the film, was aware of the film, and then my mother being an English teacher, it was sort of like, well, we're going to do the book. So we spent a lot of time with that, and I just sort of went, well, this is not, that's not the movie. What is that? And then I just sort of became this person at the library near my home where it was always, you know, let me find the next illustrated version I can find that feels more like the world that Baum was talking about, you know. I would end up sort of like, you know, I'm such a visual person that I would love finding picture book versions, but if I saw red shoes on it, I went, that's not it, you know, that's not it. So I was a bit of a purist,
Right, sure.
even then.
You wanted to see the field mice and the hammerheads.
I wanted to go for the whole thing,
Yeah.
you know, and I think there's something really grounded and earthen and poignant and sad and beautiful that the books kind of just do without trying to be.
Well, and was the Tin Man always your favorite character?
He's certainly one of my most favorite characters. I mean, I think what's really interesting about the first book is that Baum uses him to underline moments, and he underlines pretty much the end of every chapter. There's some sort of reminder of his emotional pain and of his life. You know the story, but it's worth sharing. There's a tiny little moment. I think it's once the whole foursome's together, and there's a lovely moment when he steps on a bug on the Yellow Brick Road, right? And he starts crying uncontrollably, and they go, "What's wrong?" And his jaw rusts, and we don't know what's wrong with him. They finally oil him, and then they're like, "What happened? Are you okay?" And he was like, I stepped on a bug," and they go, "It happens." And then he sort of goes, No, you don't understand. You people with hearts have something to guide you, and that'll keep you from ever doing wrong. But since I don't have one, I have to be extra careful, and so this will never happen again. So you go, there's a story with that guy, you know, like whatever that is. So I think there's a lot of resonance with the character. I also love Jack Pumpkinhead and the Gnome King and characters from other books.
Might we see you work with those characters in some capacity someday?
There might be another piece that might involve some things that I hesitate to mention, but we might go there again at some point.
We know the story, you know, because Baum gave us some clues about Tin Man, Nick Chopper,
Totally.
And Nimmy Amy, you know, the love and how the Wicked Witch of the East is involved there. So when you decided to adapt it, how did you choose to go? Did you set out writing dialogue and then decide to pare it down? And
Sure.
tell me about the process.
Yeah, I mean, certainly was starting from as much of the source material as possible, and a lot of it is obviously pulled, as the Oz fans will know, very much pulled from Tin Woodsman of Oz, which is book 12 or 13.
Right. It takes a bit of adjustment. I mean, complete visual storytelling, you have to kind of get into the spirit of it and then go with it. It's a different kind of suspension of disbelief. But I found in watching The Woodsman, which I only got to see, I didn't get to see it live, but I did see it on Broadway HD.
Yeah.
And it's almost like you're in a dreamlike state. You kind of get lulled into it because there is a rhythm, the way that the ensemble works together, your performance, and it draws you in. But once you subscribe to the fact that there's no dialogue, the story is beautifully told and engaging.
Thank you. Yeah, it was interesting because the first 10 minutes of the show is a bit of a spoken dialogue prologue that just sort of sets the scene, and it was amazing. It was always amazing because we were doing direct address to the audience, and you could really feel the houses on certain days that were like, I'm not into this.
Oh,
you know?
Really?
You could just
the energy?
The energy of just going like, oh God, is this going to be like our town? Like, what is this? And then there's a couple huge shifts in that prologue, and you really get people off their feet. And by the end, you could always feel that they were with us then, but it took a second.
Is it when the Wicked Witch of the East comes in?
A little bit around
that. Puppet is insane. What was it like crafting that puppet? I mean, because you kind of have carte blanche. That's a character that isn't often illustrated or depicted in Oz. So how did you come up with this
In
look?
the canon illustrations, there's only like two images of her, really. So there was like that to start from and kind of go, we can do what we want. It was a lot of taking from the material and kind of just taking some facts. We knew that she was a woman who had learned about magic, who then was very old, should be dead, and is keeping herself alive with her magic. She's not letting go of her throne. And you go, that says a lot about who this person is. And also there was this interesting detail that we know the Witch of the West melts with water, but there was an interesting detail when her feet are sticking out from underneath the house, that when a beam of light touches it, they turn to dust and she shrivels away. And you go, oh, maybe there's an aversion to sunlight, like an aversion to water, the other witch.
And then the Tin Man puppet. What was the thrill or challenge or intimidation of recreating such an iconic character?
Yeah, it was sort of going, all of that exists, all of the iconography exists, let me put that away for a little bit and just know that my own standards will still make something that will honor what the fans want. Do you know what I mean?
It's interesting you titled it The Woodsman, because Baum always referred to him either as the Woodman or the Tin Man. So how did you come up with that title?
It was a funny thing because I was going, the Tin Woodsman, right? And then I sort of said that, and then it was down on paper, and then I went back and realized it was Woodman, and every cast member who reread the book was like, it's Woodman. And I was like, yes, I do know that. And it's also a thing of, if it was the Woodman, there's something that confuses odd ears now. When you say a woodman, you go like, he's a man, he's Pinocchio, he's like a man made of wood. And it's like, okay, so adding that S, it tells us what his profession is. So we did sort of fudge a hair just to kind of, it's just that transition between 1800 speak versus here we are speak.
Sure, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And on the website, there is your bio, and it says this one's for Lyman. Is there another Lyman in your life other than Baum?
Just Baum. Just Baum. But no, it was definitely for him. If nothing else, it was just, I read an incredible biography called The Real Wizard of Oz by Rebecca Lawn Crane, which I'm sure you have read. And it was like weeping while reading it. It was so extraordinary hearing about his life. And you go, well, his whole life is in this piece. So it was about doing a testament.
Have you heard about the possible biopic with Eddie Redmayne as L. Frank Baum?
I have heard about it.
What do you think of that?
I think it's really interesting. I actually have been chatting with the screenwriter because there's a possibility of us collaborating on something. We'll see what that means.
Nice.
But I think that's also something that we're a bit away until that actually happens.
Right.
But I think it could be really cool.
You mentioned a little bit about maybe doing some other characters, doing some other Oz work.
Sure.
But what about like an actual film adaptation of The Woodsman?
It has been discussed. I think it's a really tricky thing, mostly because The Woodsman is sort of a love letter to theater in a lot of weird ways. I think you probably noticed. There is a possibility of trying to make that work. It's just such a wildly different medium that you go, what happens when you don't have puppets in it? What happens when it's CGI? What happens, all of a sudden, is it the same thing? And maybe there's a way to sort of marry both those things. I think it's not one or the other, but we'll see.
You ever see that short film floating around online called Heartless?
I did. I thought it was beautiful. I thought it was beautiful. I love that song that they had.
Yes.
At the end. Talk about haunting songs. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you think of other, I know we talked a little bit off camera before starting the interview about NBC's Emerald City, Wicked. I mean, are you a fan of all things Oz, or are you kind of a purist still and a faithful loyalist to Baum?
I'm always a fan of sort of seeing what people want to do with it. This is a distinctly American piece of folklore. And
Does it bother you as much as it does me whenever you
there's
see
a British accent in it?
Yeah.
It's a little weird. It's a little weird. I love Rachel Weisz.
Yeah,
and
I
I think
know.
she's stunning and so extraordinary.
But even in Return to Oz, we had, you know, the Gnome King,
Mombi and everything. And
British.
somehow, you know, even when reading the books, you hear European. There's European flavors there. I mean, he's doing a spin on Grimm Brothers, right?
And Oz is eclectic enough that we can allow for the accents.
You
but
totally can.
it's still
And it should be an inclusive environment no matter what.
But it's American. J.K. Rowling wouldn't allow that in her,
sure
in her
wouldn't.
Hogwarts.
Yeah, if Baum was alive today, maybe he would have said something. But also, I think at the same time, he was very down to like, what do you want to do?
Diversify, and
yeah.
absolutely.
So I think he may have been way more flexible.
Lastly, just for fun, let's do a quick fill in the blank.
Great.
If I only
had more time to sleep.
Nice, very good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Maybe
you.
just let us know where we can see, the Woodsman or anything else.
Yeah,
about
well,
it.
right now it's on Broadway HD, and it's going to stay there indefinitely. And there's a we're trying to figure out tours that can kind of travel the show around, and maybe in Canada, and maybe in other parts of the world. And we're just excited to keep sharing it.
It's fantastic. It's so great to talk to someone who's, you know, an equally huge Oz fan, but also is expanding the universe with his work. So thank you so much for that.
Go on.
I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Great.
Thanks.
Awesome.